Since 1897, the hotel has been in operation, and it is situated just across from the Mastbosch. As the conversation was taking place, Captain de Groot and a few of his companions were seated in the Ginnekin. They were discussing the dearth of suitable overnight lodgings in the vicinity of the breathtaking Mastbosch. The famed words, "I'll show you how to do that," were said by the captain when he was under the influence of some intoxicating substance. As promised, he followed through with his purchase of a parcel of property on the outskirts of the woodland the next day. The first visitors were welcomed into the Mastbosch Hotel in the year 1897, when it finally became a reality. During that particular year, there was a little hotel that consisted of just 25 rooms and a dining area. The horse-drawn trolley that was traveling to Breda came to a halt just at the front entrance of the Mastbosch Hotel Breda. Little changed over the first several decades of the hotel's existence, with the exception of sporadic ownership changes. When the Van Saarloos family took control of the hotel at the tail end of the 1960s, it underwent a significant expansion that resulted in the addition of 2 wings, which are today known as the Prince Willem-Alexander Room and the Grand Café Heren van Oranje. From the 1970s to the 1980s, more rooms were constructed on top of it, increasing the total number of rooms to the 47 that are now available. The hotel went bankrupt in 1997, and the present owners took over the business when it was taken over by them. This was the final alteration. In order to pay tribute to Breda's relationship with oranges, the Rotisserie de Paardentram underwent a comprehensive transformation and was transformed into the Grand Café Heren van Oranje. The Nassaus in the Netherlands called Breda their home for more than half a century. Breda is a member of the Union of Orange Stone and was established in the Netherlands. Maurits Hall, Willem I Hall, and Prince Willem Alexander Hall are the titles that have been given to the vast halls that are located on the first floor of the Mastbosch Hotel Breda. These halls have also been renamed. In spite of the passage of more than a century, visitors are still graciously received. Despite the fact that a great number of alterations have already taken place, the ambiance and the level of hospitality have stayed the same throughout the years. Waardenburg Castle, also known as Waardenburg Castle, is often considered to be among the most haunted homes in the Netherlands. Furthermore, it is among the most unsettling. Considering that the home is in a state of disrepair and is now awaiting renovation, the most of the time it is vacant. During the night, there is a ghost that wanders up and down the stairs. Footsteps can be heard. Whisperings can be heard in certain rooms. Toilets are flushed in locations where there was never a toilet. There is a ghost chamber in the east wing of the home. Items move on their own. Cold drafts can be felt in some sections of the house, and so on. It is stated that the medieval magician, Dr. Faust, resided at the castle, and that the devil took him to hell from there. Human remains were discovered in the basements, and it is also said that the devil took Dr. Faust to hell. It is impossible to remove the 2 bloodstains that are located on the glass, which are mute witnesses to the event that took place. Neerijnen and Waardenburg estates together. The Waardenburg Castle was constructed in the 13th century. Due to the fact that the south wing was destroyed during the 80 Years' War and was never restored, only half of the original edifice is still standing on the site. According to the urban legend, the castle was formerly inhabited by the notorious Dr. Faust. At the conclusion of his agreement with the devil, it was stated that he was hurled from the tower of the castle upon its completion, from the palace to the tower. However, in this particular instance, Waardenburg is an exception to the rule that the actual construction date of medieval castles is seldom known. On the 2nd of August in the year 1265, Count Otto II of Guelders made a commitment to the knight Rudolf de Kock to deliver the manor of Waardenburg. The initial tower that Knight Rudolf constructed was made of wood, but it was quickly replaced with a tower made of stone. The keep was transformed into a round castle by his son and grandson, which had 3 wings that connected to one another: a round wall, towers, a defended bailey, and a moat. Faust, the Doctor. Waardenburg Castle was the residence of the notorious Dr. Faust, as stated in a tale that was published in the Geldersche Volksalmanach, Gelderland's Folk Almanac, in the year 1842. A deal had been struck between Faust and the devil, according to which, in return for Faust's soul, the devil would provide him access to all of the information in the world for a period of 7 years. Following a period of 7 years during which he abused this ability, the devil arrived to steal his soul. Faust was pulled out of the castle tower by his hair, and the permanent blood streaks that he left behind can still be seen on the sidewalk to this day. It is true that Johann Georg Faust existed, and he was held captive at Battenberg Castle for a number of years. 100 Years of War. During the 80 Years' War, Katharina van Gelder, who was living in the castle at the time, found herself siding with the Spaniards. This decision did not sit well with William of Orange. In 1574, he laid siege to the castle, causing the south side of the structure to be destroyed as well as the walled bailey, both of which were never completely restored. The reason why the castle is currently formed like a horseshoe may be explained by this. The remainder of the castle underwent renovations in the 17th century and served as a residence for a number of different aristocratic families. The building has recently undergone extensive renovations, and it is currently being used as a place of business. The castle is only accessible to a select few. Connection between the Netherlands and the Netherworld, which is more than you may believe. There are a great number of historic castles and structures in the Netherlands, each of which has a history that dates back many years. There are some of these buildings that have frightening tales to tell themselves. In order to get into the Halloween mood, let's go ahead and investigate them. Goethe's narrative, which is based on a German folklore, is largely responsible for Faust's widespread fame. Very few people are aware of the fact that this figure really existed. Approximately about the year 1480, Johann Georg Faust was born in Germany. Those who knew him well said that he was a practitioner of alchemy and magic, and that he preyed on his young male disciples. Because of his peculiar style of thinking and the habits he had developed, the myth that he had sold his soul for the sake of frivolous pleasure was born. His experiments would be assisted by the devil, who would serve him as his servant for a period of 7 years. It is believed that Faust passed away as a result of an explosion that was generated by his own experiments. A number of people came to the conclusion that this was the work of the devil, who had arrived to get his soul. There is a lack of clarity on the location of Faust's death. Nevertheless, according to Dutch legends, he met his end near Castle Waardenburg. There is a window at the very top of the tower that has bloodstains that date back to ancient times on the sides of the frame. According to legend, here is the location where the devil stole Faust away. And the atmosphere here still gives the impression that something is waiting to lurk there for all of eternity. It is not entirely certain if Faust really resided at Waardenburg. Nonetheless, it is known that he spent some time in the Netherlands. Additionally, there is a very ancient Leeuwarden tradition that states that the ruler of the castle sold his soul to the devil. This story existed long before the Faust legend became widespread. Around the year 1500, the Singraven estate served as a convent for around 10 years from that time period. A nun was discovered to have engaged in sexual activity with the peasants during this time period, and she was determined to be unchaste. She was punished by being placed behind a wall of the convent after a sham trial was conducted against her. Until she eventually became silent, the other nuns were able to hear her cry and groan for a number of days consecutively. However, peace was never restored. The nun would make her appearance above the watermill that was located in the moat, and it was thought that her ghost would bring misfortune to the people who lived in Singraven by her presence. Even after more than 300 years, this was still the case when a guy who lived there attempted to light a cigar after supper, but instead of succeeding, he fell over an oil lamp, lit himself on fire, and ultimately died from the burns. Even in modern times, the nun is frequently shown as a hazy, light-colored mist, or as a figure that appears from behind a window on the Singraven estate. The structure was given the moniker the Black House as a result of this narrative. Within Castle Rectorin, there is a chamber that no one, not even the people who live there, dares to visit. Despite the fact that the key is now inserted into the lock, it does not turn. However, despite the fact that the chamber is likely to contain priceless antiquities and sacred vestments, individuals choose to avoid looking inside. A local hunter went insane after being bitten by a rabid dog a very long time ago. He was bitten by the hound. He was enticed into entering the chamber, and then the door was locked. For days, people were able to hear him roaring in a frantic manner. As of right now, it is as quiet as the dead, and that is the reason why no one visits that chamber today. They are afraid that the ghost of the frenzied hunter may walk out of there at any moment. A cruel maiden resided in Castle Grunsfoort, which was located close to Renkum. She was so nasty even when she was a youngster that she bit the midwife in the thumb while she was being baptized on the day of her baptism. Because she did not want to get her shoes dirty, she instructed her staff to weave silky white carpets to cover the ground wherever she walked in the town. Because she believed that the cemetery was filthy, she avoided going there as much as she could help it. Not even after the passing of her parents did she hesitate to go. At the end, she passed away by herself and was laid to rest at the cemetery. The following day, they observed crows circling the cemetery, and they discovered the woman's coffin lying on the ground, with her corpse still inside. This was contrary to what they had previously believed. They proceeded to bury her once again and weighted her down with a considerable stone. When the following morning arrived, the casket was immediately placed back on the ground. The townspeople were informed by a witch in the area that the maiden was responsible for her own actions in avoiding the graveyard throughout her life, and as a result, she was forbidden to visit the location. Once the coffin was put on a manure cart, they proceeded to drive the horse out from the town. Following some time, it was dropped into a stream that was located close to the castle, and everyone just abandoned it there. At night, when the moon is shining brightly and the water is as white as a silken carpet, it is stated that the maiden may be seen strolling across the stream, and she is supposed to inflict woe to anybody who comes close to her. Over a very long period of time, the remains of the castle of Grubenvorst, which are located by the Maas River, have appeared. Around the end of the 16th century, a young nobleman was able to catch his sweetheart as she was rowing across the Maas River with another man. When they arrived on shore and the nobleman challenged them, the other guy defeated him by shoving him into the nooks and crannies of the ruins. Before he passed away, the nobleman swore to the girl that she would never find peace and that her soul would be imprisoned by the ruins. He also promised that she would never find rest. The child was so stunned that she passed away from a severe fever 3 days after she arrived in the hospital. The ruins of Grubenvorst are now being haunted by a ghost that is dressed in a white shroud. There is a tradition that states that if a man wanders by at night, the ghost would seize him by the arms and compel him to dance with her until he passes away from fear. The maiden resided in Castle Grunsfoort, which was located close to Renkum. She was so nasty even when she was a youngster that she bit the midwife in the thumb while she was being baptized on the day of her baptism. Because she did not want to get her shoes dirty, she instructed her staff to weave silky white carpets to cover the ground wherever she walked in the town. Because she believed that the cemetery was filthy, she avoided going there as much as she could help it. Not even after the passing of her parents did she hesitate to go. At the end, she passed away by herself, and was laid to rest at the cemetery. The following day, they observed crows circling the cemetery, and they discovered the woman's coffin lying on the ground, with her corpse still inside. This was contrary to what they had previously believed. They proceeded to bury her once again and weighted her down with a considerable stone. When the following morning arrived, the casket was immediately placed back on the ground. The townspeople were informed by a witch in the area that the maiden was responsible for her own actions in avoiding the graveyard throughout her life, and as a result, she was forbidden to visit the location. Once the coffin was put on a manure cart, they proceeded to drive the horse out from the town. Following some time, it was dropped into a stream that was located close to the castle, and everyone just abandoned it there. At night, when the moon is shining brightly and the water is as white as a silken carpet, it is stated that the maiden may be seen strolling across the stream, and she is supposed to inflict woe to anybody who comes close to her. Verdolde Shop was the name of a tannery that operated on the Zeedijk during the 17th century. Due to the fact that they had two lovely daughters named Diana and Helena, the family that ran the business resided there and often had a large number of guests. There was a strong contrast between the two sisters. On the other hand, Helena was passionate and envious, while Diana was calm and kind. A young and gorgeous sailor had fallen head over heels in love with Diana, and Helena was filled with rage and jealousy as a result of this attraction. Helena attempted to attract Wouter in a variety of ways, including intercepting his letters to Diana, but none of her efforts were successful. When Diana found out that Helena had been concealing the letters, she became furious and confronted Helena about the matter. For many days, they fought, and finally, their disagreements escalated into violent altercations. During the course of this violent altercation, Helen seized her sister Diana with all her might and hurled her into a dark basement that contained tannins. Immediately after Diana lost consciousness, Helena secured the entrance to the basement. Nobody saw the criminal act. When Helena finally made her way down to the basement, 2 days later, she discovered that Diana was still alive and breathing when she examined her corpse. On the occasion when this was found, Helena beat her with a piece of wood until she was very confident that she had passed away. After that, she arranged the scene in such a manner that it gave the impression that Diana had fallen by mistake and struck her head on the way down. It was determined that the death was the result of an accident. The news that Diana had passed away was brought to Wouter's attention upon his return from the sea, and he ultimately decided to marry her as a result of Helena's persuasiveness. The crime was kept a secret until she was lying on her deathbed, at which point she admitted to having committed it. As a result, her husband turned his back on her out of hatred and cursed her soul, wishing for her to spend eternity wandering about in sorrow. On July 24, 1753, Helena passed away in a solitary condition. During that particular night, there was an extraordinary cold front, and it was stated that the other occupants of the Zeedijk were laying in their beds and heard terrible screams and moans as they slept. It was exactly 100 years later when local neighbors once again reported hearing the same terrible cries and moans at the location where the tannery had been located. Helena has never been able to be at peace. The 24th of July, 1953, saw a big audience assemble, many of whom were anticipating hearing her screams once again. There were thousands of inquisitive onlookers, as well as reporters and media crews. Nevertheless, Helena did not show up at the scheduled time. On the other hand, a significant number of individuals continue to assert that they experience a cold and hear gentle moans whenever they walk on the Zeedijk in close proximity to the haunted alley. Do you know where the home is? In spite of the fact that this tale is quite well known, there is no evidence that a tanner existed around the year 1730. However, the name of the Shop family appears in an address book from the year 1853, which is identical to the name of the family in the tale. Furthermore, the street has been known as Spooksteeg ever since the year 1855.